Hi everyone, this week on the photo book review we're going over Alec Soth's I Know How Furiously Your Heart Is Beating, which is almost like an anti-Alec Soth book. There's no clear linear narrative in it, so it's really interesting. This video comes from the vault, so I made this video a little while back. Wanted to share it though because this is kind of an undersung book. Also, if you're interested, I want to plug the Patreon. There's different levels to support the channel at. The link's below. You can read and understand about the levels, but money from that will help me upgrade some equipment that I need to do for recording and audio. But let's get into it. This book came out in 2019, and it certainly seemed to mark a departure for Alec Soth and his photographic practice, as I'll talk about a little bit earlier. But it's a beautiful book. Great kind of glimmer to it. Good spine right there. It's a Mac publication. But one of the things that I think is really profitable from looking at a book like this is I always love hearing photographers talk about their work, but photographers can explain their work. Sometimes they can over-explain their work, or they can talk very specifically, and sometimes all of that's called for. But one of the things I like about this book and some other photo books is you can hear or read or see the photographer talk about a change of heart they had in their practice, or some kind of revelation, or some kind of shift of thinking. That's what I really love to hear about when I hear artists talk about their work. Something about their work that left them change. But we'll start to turn through beautiful kind of pink pages. One of the things that Alec Soth, one of the revelations he had, was that he didn't want to work with narrative anymore. And so what that meant was this photographer who had established a career on how stories can come together to form a long narrative or story began to work in singles. And I couldn't even have imagined what an Alec Soth book without narrative would have looked like. Here we have this beautiful picture of a bird on a windowsill. Of course, photographing with a view camera for this body of work. And so all the details, this title page, all the details in this book, I want a magnifying glass to see them. There's so much. One thing that I notice in this book is Alec Soth is, there's a level of naivete in it that's really cool to see, kind of like a fascination you can tell that he has with looking through the back of that camera. But so this image, for example, he's shooting through a window pane and getting all this reflection off that window pane, but he's focusing through all that to the subject. And you get all this color and this glimmer. The kinds of pictures he's making are the kinds of pictures that you don't think to make till a professor assigns it to you. You have to use this long lens, and you have to shoot through windows and all these things. And that's what I mean when I see these photographs. Feel like there's a really there's a real enthusiasm behind them. This image right here, striking image of a figure, very curious, a woman with a dress on, and it's hard to tell what the fabric of the dress is made from. It almost looks like some kind of parchment, or maybe some kind of animal skin. It's very sheer. There's yellow hair, empty white room, and you see in this picture some of the door frame that he's shooting through, or some of the space out of focus and in the foreground. I don't think this image would have made the cut 10 years ago in an Alec Soth book, because there's kind of this maybe what seems like an inconsequential element to the right of the image, maybe something that's not necessary. in the making of the book. So I'm going to crop that out for a second with my hand. I don't know. I think sometimes, as I was looking through this book, I thought, how many pictures of my own do I kind of suck the life out of by overcorrecting and sanitizing, by like cropping things like this out? You're going to see a trend in this book. Alec Soth just seems really free-spirited. And then there is, of course, those classic Alec Soth interiors, such curious places, fascinating places, all these bookshelves. You can read the titles on them. This strange purple room. It looks like it's in a building that's falling apart. It's a really fascinating picture. And here, this one is technically perfected. Shooting upwards with a view camera and a lens, all the lines are plumb. And it doesn't seem as though it's falling back into the frame. And so there were movements and tilts and shifts used for this one. Such a master of interiors. Those classic portraits. Alec Soth talks towards the interview section at the end of this book about how it wasn't just narratives that he wasn't interested in pursuing anymore. It was also just a more empathetic, less aggressive, less kind of a prideful approach to photographing people. He wasn't trying to get what he needed out of people, which was a photograph. He was trying to have an experience and a good experience and encounter, whether a photograph came or not. I love this picture. The light's awesome. Details in the tattoo, kind of that very comfortable and casual but engaged look from the woman in that picture. Again, shooting through things. It would have been very tempting for me if I was a photographer to go back in and get a nice deep dark black. And I think something that Alec Soth is really good at is preserving the air of a picture. Someone in the background right there. It's very difficult as a photographer because photographing and editing, whether it's cutting images or working on images, are two very different things. And sometimes I don't think that I pay enough respect to the old me that made the picture, and the new me wants to totally change the nature of the photograph that I made. Kind of empty interiors, these diptychs. This is a fun, exciting picture. It's a bird on a perch inside a home, which I imagine is stuffed. Maybe not that. That'd be really amazing. Such effective use Alec Soth has of those interior flashes when he makes pictures. Does it so well. Highlights still have information in them. The color's not washed out. You don't even think about there being a flash. It just feels illuminated. Alec Soth, though, talks about a kind of epiphany that he had when he was meditating on a plane, and then in the destination to the plane, where he realized, or he had some kind of realization where everything was connected. And I think when he says everything, he means everything. And he wasn't worried about his old self, and he was going to change the way he made pictures. He wasn't concerned about a story. Everything's connected. And I think how that plays with this book is that there didn't need to be a narrative like Sleeping Along the Mississippi that tied all the pictures together. For these images, he's just meeting people at their homes or a space, spending time with them, and seeing if a photograph comes from it. This woman in 4 views, maybe 5, 6, 7 views. And so I think that he might have a new way of making pictures, but some of his old kind of instincts are back in this really satisfying way. I like the sequence of these images too as a photographer and a photo bookmaker myself. Just different. You see him using tricks of the camera. So this isn't shooting through the window pane to the other side of the table. This is a reflection in the window of this side of the table. I just love, I don't think we as photographers use the nature of the camera or lenses enough in photography. I love this image. This reminds me of one from Niagara Falls in which there's this sliver of a focal plane that cuts across the viewer right here. That's in focus. So you have a pattern on her top and the edge of her eye. That's also on focus. And then the cat looking at the camera as well. You have these color field pages. I won't go through the whole thing. I don't want this video to be too long. But let me rush through to see image. Oh, this image is beautiful. I thought this image actually looks so much like a Mona Kuhn photograph. It feels so kind of bright and alive and beautiful in a fleshy, tangible kind of way. Again, those kind of tricks of photographers of reflections and shallow depths of field and having a genuine kind of experience with a model or a sitter that's been invited. Alec Soth says he became more uncomfortable with kind of springing himself on people and expecting them to be photographed. All these people in his photographs knew he was coming and they knew who he was. And again, shooting through glass here, confusing reflections with transparency. So interesting. So interesting. The simplest of things, sheet music on some kind of piano, just made fascinating. All right, let me. So this actually reminded me of a Gregory Halpern photograph in the gesture of her body and kind of the shallow depth of field and the color of it. This image, I love images with just so much information in it. Even if you think on like a textual basis or the not just the things photographed, but with what is within the things photographed, this information, or this photograph's like an encyclopedia. This photograph has a picture of books and kind of in a way, a picture of everything in the books, which makes it fascinating. I think a lot of us come across things that are interesting. Every day, I think all of us come across things that are interesting. But it's one thing to photograph well what you find interesting. To communicate that interesting thing in a photograph is very hard and not the same as just witnessing something that's interesting. I don't mean to skip too much here. So something that I like especially about this book is the interview at the back, which is great. It's very long. Usually when you see critics or editors or curators interview artists, there's usually bigger text blocks in the interview from the academic. And here this interview really feels like it's both ways. And they're actually having a conversation. There's no injection of too much art speak or anything. It's a very informative interview and explains how this book marks a shift from how Alec Soth used to photograph and how he is now, which I guess I'm reading into myself here. I hope that my photographic endeavors change and expand and deepen the way that I see things in the world. And so it's really interesting to see a photographer, to read a photographer kind of account for the same desire I have to speak of their own experiences in that regard. But it's a great book. So what do you guys think? A book of seemingly singular images. Let me know in the comments. I talked about this picture a lot. Are there other photographs that make you feel the same way this photograph made me feel? There's a Patreon linked if you'd like to help out the channel. Goes towards cost for equipment and stuff like that. But yeah, I'll see you next time.